All right, so welcome to another deep dive. Today, we are going to be looking at some really interesting source material
Absolutely.
that you sent to us. It is excerpts from Genesis 1
From the NIV.
in the NIV translation.
Yes.
And this is going to be really cool because
Yeah.
we are talking about the creation,
The very beginning.
the very beginning,
Yeah.
as described in this book. So
That's absolutely.
we're going to be looking at some of the core ideas presented here about creation. What are the initial conditions like?
Right.
What was the sequence of events? How did it all begin?
It's a fascinating narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to try to understand all of that together.
You've provided Genesis 1 from the NIV, and we're going to kind of go through it day by day and break it down and
I like it.
and see what we can pull out of it.
Yeah, and draw out some of the deeper meaning. Okay, cool. So let's just jump right into it then. Verse 2 paints this picture of the earth as formless and empty,
Right.
darkness over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters.
Yeah, it's a very evocative image.
It is.
This idea of a void, no real structure,
Right.
not even light yet.
Right.
It's just this picture of potential,
Yeah.
but not yet realized. And then this presence of the Spirit of God just kind of hovering over the waters.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
It's like this anticipation. Of
Yeah.
something.
It's like the ultimate blank slate.
Yes.
Right.
Very much so.
So then we move into day 1,
Yeah.
verses 3 through 5.
Okay.
And God's first command, let there be light, and boom, there is light.
And there it is.
Instantaneously.
Yeah.
And then he looks at it and sees that it is good, separates light from the darkness,
Names them
names them day and night.
day and night. Yeah.
And then there was evening and there was morning the first day.
Yeah. And the pattern begins.
What do you think about the fact that light is the very first thing?
It's interesting because, it's light before we even get to the sun and the stars.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So it kind of raises this question, is this initial light something more symbolic?
Yeah.
Is it representing sort of the divine presence breaking through
I see.
the darkness, or maybe order
Yeah.
being established? And then right away you have that act of naming.
Right.
Day and night, this very fundamental duality that's going to kind of characterize the whole created world.
Yeah. Like a framework.
Exactly, a framework. And of course, that rhythm of evening and morning.
Yeah.
That sets the pattern for all the days to come.
Okay. So then moving on to day 2, we shift our focus to the water.
Okay.
Verses 6 through 8, God commands a vault between the waters to separate water from water.
What? To divide the waters.
Yeah, this vault divides the waters above from the water below, and it is called sky.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting when you think about what we now understand about,
Oh.
the atmosphere and the water cycle.
Totally.
The idea that there's this division,
Yeah.
this space between different bodies of water.
Yeah.
It suggests a really distinct environment being
Yeah.
created. And then, you have this word sky, which designates this crucial realm for the weather, for birds, eventually, for the celestial bodies.
Right, like you're creating the architecture
Exactly. It's like the structure.
and the world.
Yeah.
Okay, day 3, verses 9 through 13. Now we get land. The waters under the sky are gathered together. Dry ground appears called land. The gathered waters are called seas.
Right.
God sees that this is good.
Mhm.
But then we have another big step.
Yes.
God commands the land to produce vegetation.
Plants.
Plants, seed-bearing plants, fruit trees, each according to their kinds.
Yeah.
And boom, just as commanded, it happens.
And it happens.
God looks at it again and says it is good. What a huge leap
It is a big leap.
towards a life-sustaining environment.
Yeah, now you've got this stable foundation for life with the dry land. And this immediate command for it to be fruitful and produce vegetation.
Yeah.
It's really quite remarkable.
It is, and I find it interesting, too, this repeated phrase, according to their kinds.
Right.
Like, they're...
Yeah, there's an inherent order there and diversity within the plant kingdom right from the start.
Right, it's not just plants.
It's not just generic greenery.
Yeah.
There are distinct categories, each designed to reproduce in its own way.
Right.
So there's a real sense of a very deliberate and detailed creative act.
Absolutely. So on to day 4.
Okay.
Verses 14 through 19, now we get the sun and the moon and the
The
stars.
celestial bodies.
Yes, the lights in the vault of the sky.
Yeah.
The 2 great lights, the sun to govern the day, the moon to govern the night, and the stars.
Mm-hmm.
And their purposes are laid out. They're there to separate day from night, serve as signs for seasons, days, and years, and provide light on the earth.
Right?
And God again sees this as good. I
Yeah.
still think it's so interesting that light itself predates
Yeah.
these celestial bodies.
It does make you think.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one way to think about it is that maybe that initial light represents something more foundational,
Okay.
like pure energy or the potential for life.
Okay.
And then the sun, moon, and stars come later as these mechanisms for regulating that light and
Mm.
time within the created system.
I see.
And I also think it's interesting the emphasis on their role as signs for, sacred times, days and years.
Yes.
It highlights this connection between the cosmos
Yeah.
and the ordering of human life and ritual.
Yeah, it's about more than just illumination. It's like a cosmic calendar.
Absolutely.
Okay, day 5, verses 20 through 23.
Okay,
Animal life.
here we go.
God commands the waters to teem with living creatures
Yeah.
and birds to fly above the earth.
Oh, the skies.
Yeah. So we've got sea creatures and everything that lives in the water.
All the fish.
Yeah, and all the birds, all created according to their kind.
There it is again.
God sees that it's good. And then we have the first blessing in the creation narrative.
Yeah,
Be fruitful and increase in number.
that's right.
This feels like such a significant step
It really is.
towards a complex ecosystem.
Yeah, now you have the animal kingdom
Yeah.
and that blessing to be fruitful and increase in number.
Right.
It shows a clear intention for these creatures to flourish
Yeah.
and fill their environments.
Okay. And last but not least, we have day 6,
The grand finale.
verses 24 through 31. This is a big one.
It is.
First, God commands the land to produce living creatures, livestock creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind, as he commanded it happens.
It is done.
God sees that it is good, but then we have a huge moment.
A pivotal moment.
Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule.
Yeah, that's the big one.
That us and our in that phrasing has had a lot of discussion around it.
A lot of ink has been spilled.
Yes. So then mankind is created in his own image, both male and female. They are blessed and told to be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground.
Dominion overall.
Yeah. And then we have the provision of food, seed-bearing plants, and fruit trees for mankind, and every green plant for all other living creatures.
Yeah, provision for everyone.
And after all this, God looks at everything that he has made and declares it very good.
Very good.
What stands out to you about this culmination of creation?
Well, the creation of humanity in God's image,
Yeah.
that's definitely a climax of the whole narrative. It is.
Is.
It suggests this unique relationship
Right.
between humanity and God and, maybe even a reflection of divine attributes in humankind.
Yeah.
And then that mandate to rule and subdue the earth.
Right.
It's been interpreted in a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
but often it points to this responsibility for
Right.
stewardship,
Yeah.
care for the created world, and I think the provision of food
Right.
for both humans and animals.
Yeah.
It really underscores how interconnected life is.
Yeah.
And then that final declaration, very good.
Right.
In contrast to just good for the other days,
It is very good.
it really signifies the completion and the excellence of the entire creation.
I see.
And then us and our.
Right. It's a really interesting linguistic feature.
Yeah.
And it's been interpreted in a lot of different ways.
Right.
Sometimes it points to this complexity of the divine being,
Okay.
or maybe the inclusion of a divine counsel in the act of creation.
Interesting.
But regardless of how you interpret it, it definitely highlights this idea of community
Yeah.
associated with the creation of humanity.
Yeah, very cool. So looking back on these 6 days, we see this progression
We do.
from formlessness to a world that is ordered and inhabited.
Yeah.
We have light, the separation of the elements,
Mm-hmm.
plant life, animal life, and then humanity.
In all its glory.
It's this distinct role. And I like that repetition of according to their kinds.
Yes.
Like it just shows intentionality. It really does.
And order.
Yeah, it emphasizes this deliberate and sequential unfolding,
Yeah.
moving from the very basic elements
Yeah.
to these increasingly complex forms of life,
Yes.
and then culminating in humanity's unique place in creation.
This brings us to our final thought to leave you with.
All right.
We talked about the order light before the sun vegetation, before land animals. What deeper meaning or message might this specific sequence hold? For you, does it suggest a priority of certain principles?
It's a good question.
Or is it a symbolic account rather than a strictly chronological one?
Right.
What do you think about that?
It definitely invites us to think about the significance of that order.
It does.
Maybe it's highlighting these foundational elements that are essential
Yeah.
before you can build more complex structures.
Yeah,
So we encourage you to continue exploring these foundational ideas
absolutely.
and maybe delve into different perspectives
Yeah.
on this ancient and influential text.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you that humanity is made in God's image?
That's a good question.
How does that understanding shape your view of your own place in the world and your
Yes,
responsibilities?
absolutely.
Those are questions worth pondering.
Food for thought.
Indeed.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us for another deep dive,
Thank you.
and we'll see you next time.
Until then.
All right.
Bye.